Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here with another exciting aspect of Gnosis. Now, I'm always looking for ways of doing things better, faster and more efficient. And this is really what next level everything is about. I mean, there's lots of old technologies which may be effective but are near impossible to do because it takes so much time and dedication. Who can do that? When you do have a lot of time, if you've been working hard, it's very difficult to shift gears and to be motivated to do things that are empowering. You're just exhausted trying to regain your ability to function in general. So using a lot of old and outdated ways is not effective. It doesn't work, and we're not really sure a lot of these old methods really did anything anyway. Plain and simple, there hasn't been much changes. I don't really have much use for old technologies. While I do honor the basis of them, that they've been around for a while and that they serve a purpose as a crude foundation, we need to understand that we're not getting results that we need to. Certainly nothing is changing the world, and certainly there doesn't seem to be very many empowered people out there doing much of anything. You go along with the system, and it's just really how much you compromise and get involved with the system, and then they feed you. So it causes a huge amount of corruption. That seems to be never ending. People get caught up in their own little boxes of reality, and that's where it all is. You know, they all fall back on some old, stupid way of doing things, which I always reject from the get-go. Anytime I see anything, I say, well, can't this be done better? You've been doing it this way, but is that the good way to do it? Is that the best way? And usually it isn't. While it may work, it's set up to keep certain people in power and to keep a whole bunch of people out because of the difficulty of it or the ridiculousness of it. So what are we using, and what is really, when it comes down to what we all want, extreme abilities, and what are the major factors of it? Well, I've talked about this in all my foundations, books, audios, etc., which are highly recommended. What can you manifest, etc. You don't understand this, you are lost. The other things, of course, is if you can't put yourself in a consciousness state to just get it and make proper judgments, well, you're never going to get anywhere. If you make wrong judgments all the time, well, it really doesn't matter what you're trying to do or how, quote, good the information is. And of course, that's what centering is all about. And the fact is that extreme abilities are all based on everything else, like everything else in life. And what is that? Well, that is practice. You have to work that muscle so that you're able to activate these extreme abilities, otherwise known as mind gym, occult gym activities. You've got to build those muscles. You've got to do those things. That's part of it. And all of the actual training from the past done by the only people we can really go with, parapsychological associations, organizations, who were investigating this pretty heavily in the 80s, even up till the 90s, and so forth, were all working on, quote, games to build your abilities, plain and simple. Something that we have stressed now for the last 4 or 5 years, and of course we're correct like we're always correct. Now, getting into all of these processes allow you to change your consciousness. You achieve nothing of a high degree in regular, day-to-day, minute-to-minute consciousness. That's not the purpose of that consciousness. That consciousness is to serve going to work, driving your car, doing all the boring but very necessary things of life. Cooking, cleaning, washing your clothes. Well, you ain't going to be in too good a shape if you don't wash your clothes. All of this is the plague of being a freakish human who doesn't have fur and has to be constantly worried about cleanliness and everything else. Or it's not even a choice. If you're not clean and don't take care of things, you will get very sick and you will die. This is not something generally the animal world has to contend with on a large basis, even though it's part of their practices to a degree. So the whole idea is that you have to go into an altered state of consciousness. I've talked about this, and I like to call it a trance because I think people understand that better. And in terms of an altered state of consciousness. And a trance is a strong altered state, you could define it as. And it's from this state, once you've cleared your mind with centering and activated the power centers with mind gym work, that really changes everything. Now you're in a particular state where you need tools and techniques to activate your extreme abilities or to achieve something. But you can't do it from the normal state of consciousness. Just as simple as that. And as I've mentioned, why would you? So when you start wanting to get into extreme abilities, whatever that may be, to manifest whatever you want, because that's what really life is all about. Life is really all about manifesting, isn't it really? So what you want in life is manifesting, or even need. So whether that's relationships, higher states of consciousness, etc. Well, this is all manifest. You manifest that. Plain and simple. It's not just physical things. Of course, that's important as well. So getting into these altered states, and one of the big questions, and as we will be actually publishing some new books on what is considered shamanism and Latin or Mexican type sorcery made popular with Carlos Castaneda's, is the fact that the easiest way to get into a very altered state is through the use of particular consciousness changing substances. So, I really hate to use the term drugs. I think that's such a negative term. It's like psychic now. It has a lot of baggage with it. People go to the drugstore to get things when they're sick or to treat something. Well, I think that's a terrible term. They're getting medicine, and I think medicine is a much better way to do things. So you don't take drugs, you take medicine. Drugs are more thought of as a recreational and even negative in the fact that so many man-made drugs are so toxic. But it's not necessarily true. There's nothing wrong with recreational use of particular natural substances, which are being more and more legalized around the world, including hallucinogens, which mushrooms have been legalized, I believe, now in Denver. And this will start to spread to certain areas. There's also some medicinal use for these natural hallucinogens. When we start getting into all this artificial stuff, we get into all sorts of problems. As the body, they're too strong, they're too crude, and they have a very negative energy to them. So when they make man-made drugs, such as for pain or for mental problems, they tend to be very disturbing, debilitating, and dangerous. So when you go to the store or you go you get a prescription, you're getting medicine. You're not getting drugs. And I think that's important for everybody to understand. And when you're using shamanistic techniques, you're basically taking what would be spiritual medicine. I think the problem with all these issues, and it's a problem with everything in life, is that human beings are such a foul, disgusting organism that they misuse everything. So there's absolutely nothing that look at the the number of people who are overweight in this world, particularly in Western world. That's the improper use of food. So, because people have addictive natures. They want to constantly alter their consciousness. Now, as a human being, your number one drive in life is altering your consciousness. And then there are things that come in. You're very closely related to that is your sexual drive, which runs everything in your life, particularly if you're a male. So, everything is based in that, and the problems of life can be done because it's such people will do anything for a quick altered consciousness. And of course, one of the quickest, easiest, and free ways is some sort of sexuality. Boom, you go into an altered state. What are you doing to do it? Well, you're thinking sexual thoughts. You're getting sexually empowered, which is generating all sorts of chemicals. Your mind is thinking in very dramatic ways, and you're getting physical results from it. Again, it proves that mental turns into physical, and this is proven 100% in our lives just plain by sexuality, because physical changes happen in the body. So the point is, if you can do that by thinking sexual thoughts, there's no reason why you can't think healing thoughts to heal yourself or for anything else. So again, this is proof. So the point is using spiritual medicine, as shamans do, is very effective in a lot of people. But there's all sorts of problems with it, and I will be going into that. And we are happy to welcome aboard into the IGOS family a very noted shaman, an American-Mexican shaman who spent many years training in Peru and was easily to get in there because of his cultural background. This basic information is available on our sorcery page now, and these books will be offered very soon, along with other supporting materials in this entire area of Peruvian shamanism and its use of medicinal natural herbs like ayahuasca. As I said, anytime you start using the term hallucinogen, drug, etc., you're devaluing what these things are. There's a difference between someone who drinks alcohol and someone who's a drunk. So there's a big difference, and I think that we need to understand that, and the same thing with people that are using these. And of course, like with all these kind of things, they're very addictive and problematical. And you do get this instantaneous, this roller coaster ride. You get on a roller coaster in an amusement park and boom, you go through all sorts of feelings within a few minutes. Of course, that's what everybody wants in life, and they want to do that. They want to go to that spiritual realm and get the same thing. Now, this is a very powerful way and can have excellent effects on people to break them away from the toxic, evil environment that we're living in, this whole contrived fantasy reality that society perpetrates on you. The good cops, the judges, and doctors who want to help you, militaries that protect you. This is all an illusion. And it's a horrible illusion because they are evil institutions that are destructive. And it just goes on to all of this living in comic book religions and really understanding the entire world we live in from a contrived, fabricated reality that is baseless to anyone but a programmed imbecile. And of course, that's exactly what education or academia is. Programmed imbeciles that come off like they're educated. And they're just teaching the same old garbage and achieving very little. So as we all understand this, then we need to be bluntly taken to new realities that shock you into understanding, because you've experienced in this semi-real psychedelic world a total new reality. And is so potent and so effective because of these chemicals that are produced within the brain and whatever contact may or may not be happening. And we'll go into all these aspects of these things to understand this. And our expert in this area, we will be making lots of his own audios and talking about these things as well, so that we can get into this. But I think it's an important area that needs to be covered, and there's a great use in it. Every time that I, in the many years ago, used to advertise shamanism as part of the interest, which of course is a big word, shamanism, in terms of what it covers. So there's a vast area that it covers, but shamanism, we thought to go back to the use of medicinal medicines, spiritual medicines that you take. And I'd always get phone calls of people saying, well, what are you using, where you're going, what kind of vision quest? And of course, we were not into that then, and I'm not overly a big supporter of this at this particular time. But, I don't feel that's a personal opinion, and I've listened to many, many people's stories, and the fact that they've been grabbed, smacked to the floor, and their entire reality has been changed through these visions, through taking these substances, that there is a great factor here to assist people. And if you work with the right people and you know what you're doing, you can make sure that these visions, these spiritual, natural medicine-induced states, these trance states that you get into, could be very powerful for you and life-changing. It's very individualistic, and you have to be very careful. The problem with all these things is when you have to go to third world countries of questionable morality and deal with individuals, you have all sorts of problems. And that, even if it was legal in most Western world, which it isn't, although it is legal in most Latin countries, you have problems with anybody who knows what they're doing right. So it is not unique to the Latin world that you're going to find a bunch of bozos that don't know what they're doing. Pretty much you can find that on every street corner of America, called your doctor, your policeman. They're all bozo corrupt idiots. And so the whole idea is when you go to these places, you have to make sure that you know everything about the subject matter and that you are dealing with proper people. And that's why we're so happy to bring this new person into the IGOS family, because this is a credible person with morality who has spent years seeing what actually went on there, all the good and the bad, has learned how to make these potions, these sacred medicinal potions, correctly and knows how to do it. Unlike if you listen to so many other people, how they've gotten really bad stuff, and some people have even died. Other ones have had money taken from them, have been gotten into horrible problems. And if you scar the mind, this could be something that scars you horribly and makes you even dysfunctional for the rest of your life. So finding a person who can guide you properly is essential. And we hope to be a conduit for this with this credible person that I've known for several years and who's put together some basic, simplistic starting texts, which hopefully will build from that. A young person who is growing in wisdom and knowledge daily, combining the best of what he's learned from these Peruvian shamans, as well as what the best he's learned from IGOS. You know, this synergy is very important for everyone to take their traditional and interested cultural and most aspects path and build upon them with some solid foundations that IGOS can give you. And we've talked about this, and this is what a lot of people do, particularly when you start off. The whole idea is you have a tradition you're interested in, and a lot of times this is cultural. So, you know, blacks tend to want to go into hoodoo and voodoo, and of course Latins go into Santeria and the Bruja magic and so forth, which we have an excellent book on. So, I mean, this is normal, and something that generally gets people started. But, you know, there is a great foundation of the manifesting sciences, the occult sciences out there that the Guild has been working with and putting down into print for over 40 years. That is very valuable. So there's a lot to be learned there. And you can modify and take these techniques and use them with any tradition that you enjoy. You don't have to stick to one particular tradition only. Learn to blend in. This is what life is all about. Blending is where you get your greatest empowerment. It's a synergy, which is a word I love and something that people should understand. Synergy means that you're creating a much better product or situation by combining all positive elements together to create one larger, better element. And I always find that this works because, you know, I've never found that anybody has the answer entirely. There's interesting things in Buddhism. There's interesting things in ancient Christianity. There's interesting things in ancient Hindu practices. There's interesting things in everything, Tibetan, you name it. But as a totality, well, ultimately they all end up into the same boring, slave-based system of political or religious control, which comes down to money, because they turn into organizations. Organizations turn into things of survival. Survival turns into money and basically corruption. But do you throw the baby out with the bathwater? Oh, it's all bad. It's all bad. It all sucks. No. Stupid. There certainly is fantastic techniques that you can get from India, a place I really kind of despise because of its arrogant spiritualism without much of a, where's the beef? Doesn't seem to be much happening in that country. With horrendous poverty, yet $6 billion a year is spent on the space program. So what we need to understand is the fact that there are values within that system that need to be taken out, and you need to throw out the dirty bathwater. And that goes for every system. Then you have what's left and what's effective. And to a certain amount, that is also dependent upon yourself and what you like, or what works best for you. And of course, that's how life is. And it's very hard to teach that, and I'm sure I lose people. Well, I do want to do what works. Well, here's the guidelines, but you have to ultimately figure out what works best for you. And that's what masters do. Masters learn a craft, a spiritual understanding, and then they adapt it into what they can do the best. And this becomes where the individual can soar to that mastership. Everybody can become a technician and do things pretty much fairly well by being trained over the years. Can they become masters? No, you have to think different. Maybe these kind of substances will help. Now, it is really unknown because it's so many things from radionics to official orgone by Wilhelm Reich that everything is not allowed. You're persecuted. You're murdered. So the fact is you're never able to get really good information about people and things, or whether a technology is valid, because it's really never publicly tried and tested. As a matter of fact, the opposite happens. So people do things in back rooms and hidden places, and they're unable to get the results they seek, or we don't know about the results they get because of the fact that it is illegal everywhere, and then they go after these people. So this is a major, major problem. This plagues every field that I know of that is alternative. Free energy. What free energy? Supposedly, free energy was available 20, 30 years ago and talked about freely on the talk show by Bill Jenkins with John Bandini and so many other people, some of them that are still alive today. And where is it? It's nowhere. It's all suppressed. And apparently they can't get out any kind of technologies to the public for one reason or another, which to a certain extent to me is baffling. And other ones it isn't. This is suppressed. They're not going to let you do things. But what does that mean? Can't you just sell a product? Because these people still were around for many, many years, and they could have built these things and offered them. Yet I am mystified of why some of this didn't happen. So the whole idea is that this is the problem that happens, and ayahuasca is one of those. There's a lot of dangerous, bad problems that happen going down to strange, dangerous, corrupt societies. Los Angeles. And even further when you go down to Peru and other places. And the problem is these things are very based in a shamanic formula. So many things, and we're going to have this happen with marijuana as it becomes more and more legalized, and particularly with things like this, is we're going to have brands. Just like we have brands of so many things in life. You like a particular pizza. You drink a particular type of vodka. Well, I like Grey Goose or whatever it is. And other things that people prefer. And of course, marijuana is going to be the same way. You're going to be able to buy cheap brands at Walmart, or you're going to get the more sophisticated ones that are supposedly, with big quotient marks, better. And you're going to like ones over the other. Now, when it comes to ayahuasca, this is a cooked potion. You have to do it the right way. You have to add the right ingredients. And this is not something that somebody's using out of a book. It's very dependent on the individual shaman who's making it. And is he making it right? Who are they? Are they just taking thousands of dollars from these tourists? They go down there. After all, you don't know nothing. And how are you going to in any way know what's happening? Obviously, you can go to several of these. You can get a lot of different swill that they give you and get different results from it. And if you get a bad results, does that mean you got bad ayahuasca? If you get a good one, was that good? If you get something that's in between, what is it? Is this a brand situation? And of course, these kind of people that are making this stuff aren't exactly, or usually, your pillars of society. Again, whatever that means. But they're generally not people, they're very traditionally based. They're people who live in a very primitive culture, doing whatever they do, and there are problems there. And I've heard many of this from our master sorcerer, our ayahuasca master, who will assist people, of these horror stories and what has to be done and what people were doing. And of course, like with anything in life, and especially when there's a lot of money, there's an awful lot of shenanigans going on. People that are very upset and with lots of money that murders and everything else go on. These are countries where this is not overly unusual to begin with. So you're getting into very problematic situations. So you have to be very careful, and you have to do things correctly, and you have to make sure that everything is working properly. How do you do that? Well, there's no way to do that, but there will be a way that you'll be able to do all of that, because we now have a credible person, a person who's come from the United States, has grown up in a American-type family of Mexican descent, who's an intelligent, well-read person, and he has morals to do things right. Or I should say the inner understanding of what's right, and will follow through with that. You can't trust anybody else, because it's only the dollars and the dollar. And there's nothing wrong with charging for everything. We all have to do that. The cost of living is horrendous now. And if you're not making thousands and thousands of dollars a month, from 5 to 10 grand a month, you don't live too well. And you certainly can't meet your bills. It's really sad. So, but there is a level that you do things. And fortunately, this person, supported by and assisted by and hopefully guided and controlled to a degree, will make sure that shenanigans don't happen, and that we will guide you down the pure path here. It's essential for those interested in this. And, there are many things, because of the suppression of marijuana, we found out that a whole bunch of medical cures were suppressed with it, and that CBC oil has a great effect on some percentage of the population. Some people who are having a particular horrible seizures. I remember one case of a person who was living in New Jersey under the psychotic mental case mafiosa Christie, who was governor there, who was so anti-marijuana. I wonder who's making him so anti-marijuana. So the minute it's legalized, there's a huge shift in money, at least initially, to more legitimate sources. Of course, they'll get their fingers in there anyway. But the point is that, what is that all about? But this child who was living there couldn't get this, and then they finally moved to Colorado, but used to a 5 or 7-year-old child who was going through horrible seizures every day, and her life was ruined because she couldn't get CBC. Once she got CBC, this entirely changed. Unbelievable of a society that can allow that to happen. So, this is what happens, and the same thing has happened with LSD, ayahuasca, and its variants. That could happen if they are used properly for all kinds of conditions. They found that people can alleviate addictions with the use of ayahuasca, and help with many mental situations. And it can, if we figure out how to use it in a little more controlled fashion, it could have amazing possibilities to the manifesting scientist. Put you into states where you can be super powerful without having to do a whole bunch of other stuff, and living the monkish life and having to live totally isolated to achieve these high states of consciousness. Very, very interesting. We're always looking for shortcuts. I'm always looking for machines, techniques, the sigils, the audios. All these things are, what can we do that's quick and easy in your life, yet still effective? And if something requires to be effective that you work 2 or 3 hours a day on it, or stay in a particular state, nobody's going to do it, period. It's impractical, even if it's effective. Even as running this organization, I find it quite difficult to do lots of practices every day, because I'm constantly being pulled away to do other things, from reading email to taking care of basic postage problems, doing more research and other things. That's very difficult, and that means everybody's having the same problem to one degree or another, and most people to a high degree. As I said, the fatigue factor, even if you have free time, destroys your ability to do anything. You have to have free time where you feel good. So, and how many people have that? So, using spiritual medicines to enter into states of empowerment could be a fantastic. So, what the results of these things have, I'm not a big fan of hallucinogens, and I kind of to be honest about it, worry about the potential horrendous energies that certain parts of my mind would have if opened up. But these are things that need to be explored, and the only way you explore these things is by refining these particular things. And we're talking about something that is is radically changed, since it's a mixture. It's like making a particular substance that you're combining together in the very vast differences in each of these substances. I'm trying to think of some correlation, but anyone who's ever been into whiskeys understands that there are thousands of brands of whiskeys, and they're all made a little different, and they all taste a little different, and they all have different qualities of smoothness, meaning less biting, and different cultures. Some of the finest whiskey in the world, surprisingly, is made by the Italians and the Japanese. The basic Scots are way behind. Most of their stuff is pretty bitter and boring. So the whole idea is that when people are cooking packages of this, does the freshness of the ingredients, and there's several ingredients. It's not, ayahuasca is not just ayahuasca. You have to add other things to it, and there are mixtures that are made. So how long it's cooked, how fresh are the ingredients, does that matter? If it's cooked 4 days and instead of 5 days, does that make it better or worse? Well, these are the things that are going to have to be defined, and this comes from years of doing that. Now, our shamanic master here spent years watching this process in Peru of how they did it, what had to be done. So this is something that, of course, is as rare as it gets, because you're you never really find too many people that have spent that time down there doing it, and especially someone who blended in better because he was part of that cultural racial background. Being Hispanic himself, he was accepted in much easier than if you went down there as a white man. Nobody wants to share with anybody else. And do white men ever get all the information? Well, you can buy a lot of stuff, but even that money, it's a smile they give you, and they ultimately give you a negative, or the picture is always lacking. This has been said by many practitioners from all around the world. The Chinese are famous for not wanting to teach white men and think that they don't even have the consciousness to get it, because of the Western rush society, and the Orientals tend to think differently. Well, I think there's truth in that, even though that tends to be, I don't believe that entirely, but people do think different. They have ways of doing things, and while you'll get an Asian who understands time and will take it, or has the time for some reason, and are looking at a longer picture, Westerners won't do that. And that can be a strength or a weakness, depending on how it's applied. But there is certainly things to that, and I don't believe that people of different cultures are open to it. Even the fact that this person is Mexican-American, or American-Mexican is the correct way really to say those things, left him out of the picture to a degree, but he spent enough time there that he was able to be accepted fully and learn everything. And, of course, the value of him being able to speak English to communicate with the people that were coming to these people made him a very valuable person. Because that's how you get more money. And certainly all these people who spend thousands of dollars a year on Starbucks and donuts and BMWs and sweaters, or whatever the hell they do, or $10 on an apple from a health food store, certainly can pay these people plenty of money for this unique service, but you should be getting back what you deserve from it as well. So, all of this is very important and very difficult to find. So it's exciting to bring this person on board, and we want to welcome him on board and be watched for those new books on shamanism coming. And we are a strong believer in finding shortcuts to states of empowerment where you can then activate extreme abilities, whatever that may be. And some may be more Western-based, with turning knobs on a box. That's particular psychotronic or consciousness machines, which Western people like so much, particularly myself, taking spiritualism and putting it kind of in a box like we're used to, making it more scientific. Not really, but it does that. I think it's something that a lot of people relate to in the Western world easier. But there's also those who like the bare feet on the grass attitude of going out into nature and communing with all those different things. But anything we can do to make a shortcut or even a combination of this would be very powerful. I do believe that consciousness radionic type machines, when tuned to a person, can probably bring a much better trip. I think that they will see better things. Maybe you could tune into people and send them in a particular journey while they're on this spiritual medicine. Maybe you can define them more. So this is the taking a gross understanding or taking these kinds of situations and updating it into a more interesting situation of how you can use different technologies to affect other things. So, as again, it's all synergy. Are you combining with it? If you use different occult oils, will this empower you to get a completely different vision from this spiritual medicine? So, there's a lot that can be done here. And of course, only IGOS is involved in this way of thinking. But this is an exciting path, and we are anxiously, as so many things are going to come from this new mass legalization of marijuana as it takes over the United States and eventually the world. And of course, it's only being fueled by the huge billions of dollar market this is. And of course, there's going to be problems with everything. And marijuana is not the panacea they'd like to tell you. It doesn't cure everybody. It's not great for everybody. And I'm sure we're going to find people that are allergic to it, and we're going to have plenty of addicts. We have addicts of everything. Look how fat everybody is. Maybe we should have supermarkets where you need to get a permit to go in. And maybe only certain aisles where you use a card, when we keep the fat people out of the cookie and candy aisle. And potato chips and soda and all the other things. Maybe your card don't fit into that aisle. So the point is that we need to understand that everything is abused. There's all sorts of problems, and to target something as inane as and potentially helpful as marijuana is absurd. Even though I'm a person who's really never used marijuana, even at a time when it was extremely popular. At my age level in the 70s in high school, etc. But I never really used it for, I've always had bronchial problems, so I never liked bringing smoke into my lungs. Never thought that necessary. And of course, for whatever reason or not, I always found alcohol to be sufficient for those kind of situations. But when you get into consciousness empowerment and altered states, the big question is and I'm going to go into that in a different audio. The question is, can any of this put you into altered states that give you great value? Now, we know that they can shock you initially, and they do work for a lot of people, especially those boring people who live in countries where they never fear anything, who live in a fantasy world. Well, the point is that that is the reality that a lot of people need that. Or maybe you're just a boring person who just really thinks that everything is fine, the TV shows are wonderful, and all of this is just the way the world is. Well, maybe if you get a good blunt in the head, you'll see things from a realistic point of view. So this value, this shock, this roller coaster scary ride, which is basically very secure. You go on a roller coaster and it can be very frightening, but ultimately, is it? Well, very few people die on roller coasters, even though a few do. But statistically, it's very, very few. So the point is that you are in a controlled atmosphere, and if you're with controlled people that know what they're doing, it should be pretty damn safe, especially if the mixtures are proper. And maybe there could be mixtures given to beginners, etc. I think there's a whole realm of things that can be done here that people need to think about, so that things aren't as traumatic. But can this be a fantastic tool? Well, I really think it can be. And in the past, I said I was not really in favor of it. And that was because I'm not sure that anything that you regurgitate out of your mind, and those that use the substance is talking to you, the substance is connecting you to these other realms of spiritual realities. Well, I'm not sure about that, but it doesn't really matter whether it comes from your mind or somewhere else, if it has a value, if it does something from you, if it's so rude and in your face, you are going to change your reality, the way you think, etc. So, until next time, everyone.